What's going on? Welcome into a Week 17 version of Empty the Notebook. Evan Washburn alongside Aditi Kinkhabwala. We're rolling through what Aditi feels like the longest week in NFL history, at least in my memory. We've had 16 games over the course of 5 days, including Christmas, a Thursday, 3 on Saturday. We're talking on a Monday morning after a busy Sunday, and there's still one more game to be played. So a lot to sort through. You and I were on the road yesterday. You were in Jacksonville trying to stay dry. I was feeling for you because I was in Tampa thinking, man, I'm going to get dumped on as well. It wasn't as bad, but how are you hanging in?
I'm okay. I dried out a little bit, sort of, kind of, and I'm pumped you got to see my buddy Baker Mayfield.
No, I enjoyed my time with your kind of soul match there when it comes to mentality. And we'll get into Baker and the Jags and what you saw maybe. But often our lead of this show is about our two games. But the reality is there's so much happening right now in the league, especially after the week we just had. So we thought it'd be better to kind of do our takeaways, maybe 2 things, 3 if we have time, that we're still thinking about here on a Monday morning outside of our games. Look, it could be from one of our 2 matchups. But Aditi, why don't you kick us off with something that you're still thinking about here on a Monday midday after what feels like the longest week of football that I can remember?
Well, I don't think it was officially Saturday night. I think it was Saturday afternoon, but it bled into Saturday night. And that, of course, was the Bengals-Broncos game, which, what a game. So much fun. We've seen so much of the Broncos and the Bengals. And I know that you're going to want to get into T. Higgins. I definitely want to have that conversation with you. But I need to come back to Joe Burrow, who basically won that game 3 separate times, or needed to win that game 3 separate times. And Evan, what really is striking me is the season that Joe Burrow is having. And I know we talked about this last year, the mental fortitude it takes to be playing what he is openly saying is the best football he's ever played, while the rest of the team, meaning the defense, is not necessarily following him. And it's completely thrown my entire thinking about my MVP vote in disarray. I was already struggling with Lamar versus Josh Allen. And now you throw in Joe Burrow, who's playing the position as well as anybody is playing the position. And his team isn't even in the playoff conversation if he's not playing the way that he is. But maybe, Evan, even worse is help me figure out my All-Pro vote. I can only have 2 All-Pro quarterbacks. Which 2 of the 3 are my All-Pro quarterbacks?
If you're asking my opinion, I would go Lamar and Josh. And unfortunately, Joe Burrow's left on second team All-Pro. That's a thing, right? Based off of the fact that his team is what it is this year. And look, you're spot on. He's having an unbelievable season. It's the beauty of football, though. It's a team game. And I think the most valuable player award does have to incorporate how you're able to elevate all those around you and overcome some challenges that you may be dealt with, whether it be in roster construction or the other side of the ball. And my takeaway, or one of my takeaways from that game, and you're right, I mean, it was as entertaining as we've had in a number of weeks, just the back and forth nature of overtime alone. But T. Higgins, man, he's special. And we know this, you know this, you've developed a good relationship with him. You talked to him recently. And I walked away from that game thinking, he may say he doesn't want number 1 wide receiver money, but someone's going to throw a lot of wide receiver number 1 money at him. If I'm the New England Patriots, I am opening my checkbook. He might make more than Jamar Chase at this point, because when he's healthy, he is as dynamic, as challenging, as talented, a deep ball threat, but also an underrated route runner. And I thought he took over that game just as much as Joe Burrow did. And it was a beauty to watch, because he's equally as good a person and teammate. And that's what makes this so frustrating, that there just might not be enough money to go around, because once again, as you know, Jamar needs to be paid as well. And he's proven over the course of this season that he deserves to be paid more than anyone in the league at that position.
So now, and here's what's so interesting about my conversation with T. Higgins, because I said to him, Aren't you motivated to show that you are indeed a wide receiver one who can stand alone? Because he, of course, plays, as you've said, and we know, as a wide receiver one. That team has two of them in Jamar and T. So aren't you, one, motivated to show that you can stand on your own, and two, to get that payday? And he had such a long, insightful conversation with me, Evan, about how good he looks when he plays with the quarterback that he believes is the best quarterback in the league, when he shares a field with the wide receiver that he believes is the best wide receiver in the field. He said, that opens up so many things for me. And then the other thing he said is that in this offense, anybody can be spotlighted in any given week. One week, it might be Jamar's turn. Another week, it might be Chase Brown's turn. Another week, as we saw this past weekend, it might be T. Higgins's turn. And then he said to me, when you win, everybody eats. And that to me, Evan, was so smart. How many times have we seen players leave because they think that there's an extra $1 million or an extra $3 million somewhere? I saw Le'Veon Bell do that, leave the Steelers, where he had Ben Roethlisberger, where he had Antonio Brown drawing defenses, where he had an offensive line that was designed to block exactly for him, for an extra $1 million from the Jets. Whereas if he had stayed in Pittsburgh and won a championship, he might have made up that money in endorsement money. Because again, when you win, everybody eats. So now I'm not saying that T. Higgins is going to stay. I'm not saying that the Bengals can go ahead and lowball him and that there's a hometown discount here at play. But I do find it interesting that a player this young is thinking so three-dimensionally about it. And then the other thing that's really interesting here is that he fired his agent. He hired Jamar Chase's agent. And when I talked to Jamar Chase about that, he said, look, T's just an unselfish guy. He's nothing like when I shared a wide receiver room with Justin Jefferson. It's a very different ballgame. So I think this is going to be something that's very fun to watch.
Yeah, let's hope they can work it all out. I think it's going to be a lot more than just $1 million or $3 million extra for T. Higgins. My other takeaway, Aditi, Kansas
Someone
City,
can hope,
we've
right?
tried to figure out what they're going to be all season because they just keep winning games outside of the Buffalo loss. But what I took away from Wednesday was this team's starting to figure out who they're going to be at the most important time, which is when this calendar turns to 2025 and they're in the playoffs. And I've never doubted the Chiefs this year. They've tested that theory based off of how they've won games. It's almost seemed destined at times when balls are bouncing off of goalposts and they're blocking kicks to win games. But they look like the Chiefs that start to find out who they are come playoff time. And it made me think, if you're going to bet against the Chiefs, whether you're literally betting against them or it's your season to doubt them and think, man, is this Buffalo's the year? Is this the Ravens' year? Man, they made that a scary proposition with the way they handled their business over the course of not just the game on Wednesday in Pittsburgh, but really over that 3-game and 11-day stretch. And I think you can throw Baltimore in the mix there. That to me was a real separator of like who's for real right now, because that was a Herculean effort and Kansas City walked out of it looking as good as anybody.
I'm with you. I'm with you right there. But it does make you wonder because the Steelers are on a slide also. And as well as Russell Wilson has played all year, is he kind of turning into what we thought he was before the year started? I don't know. Interesting questions.
It's a fun week. So much that we didn't get into. We'll touch on our two matchups coming up next when we empty the notebook. Welcome back into Empty the Notebook. Evan and Aditi with you every week. The show that takes you on the sidelines into the production meetings. And then also, as we like to do on this show, maybe tell you some things that we couldn't get on the broadcast based off of the way the game played. And Aditi was in Jacksonville. I was in Tampa, where they beat up on the Carolina Panthers. There was a lot going on in this game. We had ducks on the field. We had fans bringing footballs back onto the field, negotiating with Pro Bowl quarterbacks to see what they could get for that ball. It was a fun day, all the same. But Aditi, the thing that we didn't really dive too deep into, we obviously acknowledged Liam Coen, the offensive coordinator for the Bucs, based off of what they did in this game. It felt like a fast Friday practice, just the efficiency. And it got me thinking, and look, his name has started to emerge as one that will get some interviews in the head coaching cycle. And I'm not usually the guy that says, hey, this team is top 5 in these categories, offensively or defensively, he deserves head coach recognition. I just think that's too simple. I look at that head coach job more as a CEO. We've heard the term leader of men. I kind of believe in that. That's why I liked your point a couple of weeks ago about special teams coaches deserving a little bit more of an acknowledgement in that process. But I do think seeing the way Liam Coen has attacked this job, his demeanor, his history, what he's done with Baker, he seems like a guy along the lines of Ben Johnson that would fall into that category of he should get some real recognition for what he's doing. He was a quarterback at UMass, grew up in New England. I know that New England job isn't open. It's starting to feel like it's trending in a different direction than it was a few weeks ago. He'd be perfect with any of these young quarterbacks that do need somebody in the head coaching position to help lead the way. And outside of all the scheme stuff, Aditi, and this is really where I kind of value things more than maybe most. He seems like somebody who could walk into a room, command respect, but also be able to connect with players, which at this point, much like his mentor and Sean McVay was able and is able to do, I think he could do it really well.
You know, and you make such a great point about culture building, because so much of head coaching is not just the X's and O's. It's how do you turn over a building in a certain way? How do you turn over a feel in a building? It's what we've seen Jim Harbaugh do out in Los Angeles. It's what Doug Peterson had to do twice following Chip Kelly in Philly and what he had to do after Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. So by that, I liked Liam Coen. Really funny little fact. Our director, Mark Grant, went to high school with Liam Coen's parents. They're all connected from this small town in Louisiana, which is pretty cool. I did talk about this one, Evan, but I think not a lot of people watched our game. We had the 3-12 Titans facing the 3-12 Jaguars. I don't know what the final ratings numbers would be. I would encourage everybody to go back and watch the game because I'm really proud of what we did. We emptied everything in the kitchen sink into our broadcast. But there's one young man that I did talk about quite a bit that I just feel deserves a bigger stage and a bigger spotlight, and that is Brian Thomas Jr. When the draft came by last April, there were a bunch of other wide receivers catching a lot more attention than him. His LSU teammate, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., Roma Dunze. Brian Thomas Jr. basically flew under the radar, but he was actually the number 1 wide receiver on the Jaguars board and in Doug Peterson's mind. And he yesterday became just the 4th rookie wide receiver ever, joining Odell Beckham Jr., Jamar Chase, and Randy Moss. I think you've heard of all 3 of them, with 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns. And the reason that this is so amazing to me is that this young man is playing on a terrible team. There is no one else drawing attention on this team from defenses other than Brian Thomas Jr. And he is always drawing the opponent's number 1 shutdown corner. He is a game breaker. He is a game breaker in a way that Brock Bowers, a tight end, who is always a mismatch. Look, Brock Bowers is always facing a safety or a linebacker, and he can run like a wide receiver. Brian Thomas Jr. is always facing the best shutdown, fastest cornerback there is. And he is still doing that with uneven quarterback play and with nobody else on his team drawing any attention. And it's really about how he is so quietly going about his business. He's getting better every single week. He's worked so hard to read coverages better, which has made him a better route runner. And Evan, you'll love this. I said to him, like, well, Brian, you're sure making it awfully easy. And he looks at me and he says, no. None of this is easy. I'm working for everything I've gotten. And he really is. There's no diva to him. He is a true joy to watch. And he's a young man I think we'll be talking about for a long time. He is as Doug Peterson said, the best and brightest spot on a Jacksonville team that unfortunately hasn't had many. And let me throw one more thing out there. Can you imagine him in an offense with a healthy Trevor Lawrence, a healthy Evan Engram, a healthy Christian Kirk? What could he do then?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has been a revelation this year. It just continues to cement the idea that when in doubt, just select a wide receiver out of
Out of
LSU.
LSU.
And I think that's what makes the Jags a really interesting discussion point moving forward. And that falls into the Liam Coen, Ben Johnson's discussion. Does Doug Peterson retain that job there in Jacksonville? Is Trent Baalke still their GM? Because there are pieces there that you would think, whether it's a Mike Vrabel or one of these younger offensive guru types, would love to go down and start to build around. It's an ideal spot. It's why Bill Belichick's name was often thrown around when it came to the Jaguars heading into 2025, if they were to move on from Doug Peterson. And I think Brian Thomas Jr. at that position too, as you know, that wide receiver position, the transition from college to the NFL it's a steep climb. That's why Marvin Harrison Jr., while he's made plays, hasn't maybe lived up to unreal expectations many had for him when he was coming out of Ohio State and drafted where he was. And usually it's the guys we don't think about that make the biggest impact. Look at what Ladd McConkey's doing with the LA Chargers. And that's a playoff team, and he's their best pass catcher right now. So it's always a fun position to evaluate coming out, because they're the guys we know because they make the most plays on Saturdays. But man, some of them get lost in the shuffle on Sundays, and Brian Thomas Jr. is not one of those guys.
You're absolutely correct about that. With Ladd McConkey, who we've also seen this year, who I have been so impressed by, and who I also met way back at the Combine, I would say he's got a better, more consistent run game in J.K. Dobbins, led by J.K. Dobbins, and he's gotten better quarterback play. Justin Herbert is playing the position tremendously. And so these are all things that you think about, and it's just like when we're talking about Joe Burrow and what we're overcoming. I will say this about the brain trust in Jacksonville. Shad Khan is a very methodical thinker. He's a very smart man. He keeps everything as close to the vest as possible. So truly, I don't know that anyone is definitively able to say where his head is right now. I will say this. Doug Peterson came in, changed that culture, took his team to the playoffs in year one, then in year two was playing the last week of the season for a playoff berth. This year has been racked by injuries. Could make an argument that he deserves more time. I would venture to say, though, that Shad Khan will demand, should he keep Doug Peterson, that he make some changes on that staff. That defense in particular has been very disappointing. There's some other issues in how Trevor Lawrence has or has not improved. I think you can see some changes on that offensive staff. The front office, though, Trent Baalke's gotten to make 2 number 1 overall picks. He spent $400 million in guaranteed money this offseason on players that have grossly underperformed. Is he getting an opportunity to make yet another high pick? That one I think could be a little bit more interesting. And when you're throwing out Mike Vrabel's name, let me also throw out Brian Flores, because I think that is another man who deserves an absolute hard look at head coaching opportunities.
We'll have answers to all these questions a week from today. Often that Monday after week 18 can be a challenging one for a lot of folks in the coaching profession. We're throwing some flags next. Welcome back into Empty the Notebook. Evan and Aditi with you. We close out the show the same way every week. We possibly throw some flags. The way this works, we'll each present a statement to one another, and if we disagree with it, we throw the flag. If we agree with the statement, then we keep it in our pocket. Aditi, I will present you with my statement first.
Okay.
The Vikings must, I say must, re-sign Sam Darnold. And by re-sign, I mean break him off some change to be the quarterback moving forward for the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, your stressing of must is I don't like being boxed in. I was going to keep the flag in my pocket.
That's the idea of the game. So embrace the rules, my friend.
Well, okay. If you're going to be that adamant, then I'll throw the flag on that one. Here's that was a terrible flag throw. Here we go. Okay. So I do think that the Vikings have to make an effort to re-sign him. Did you see that post-game locker room? Did you see how much his teammates love him? Do you see how he works? All of that. And we don't know when exactly JJ McCarthy will be at full strength. We know for sure that getting some seasoning behind a veteran quarterback does not have to be a bad thing. Look at Aaron Rodgers. Look at Patrick Mahomes. It might not be a bad thing for JJ McCarthy to get another year behind Sam Darnold. But the breaking the bank, the same way that we're talking about T. Higgins and how much money might be available to him, I don't know that the Vikings should necessarily commit hundreds of millions of guaranteed money to Sam Darnold if that is what he can get on the open market, and just forget about what they felt for JJ McCarthy. That one's a hard one for me. But like I said, I think you changed the rules on me a little bit there.
Oh, no, not at all. I'd give him 3 years, $150 million and call it a day. All right, what do you got for me?
All right. The Eagles should absolutely, definitely allow Saquon Barkley to pursue the single-season rushing record versus their hated rival Giants.
And his flag stand in the pocket. I hope and pray that they let Saquon eat on Sunday. This is history. Look, they're a Super Bowl contender. I understand health is always paramount, but this is a chance to etch your name in the record books as one of, if not the greatest runner in a single season that we've ever had. And he can do it. He just needs 101 yards against a team that has nothing to play for. And oh yeah, it happens to be the team that let him walk. We're in the entertainment business, and this is a player that's having a special season. It's going to probably come down to a conversation with Saquon and Nick Sirianni. And I could kind of tell, just sort of reading between the tea leaves there and how Saquon was presenting it, and he's the ultimate team guy despite his individual success, that he wants it. And I hope they let him go for it. I think they should let him go for it. That's what this is about. It's about making special things happen. So flag staying in the pocket. That'll do it for us. If you missed any part of the show or joined us late or want to watch full episodes, head to the NFL on CBS YouTube channel. Have a happy new year, everybody, and we'll see you next Monday.